Hello everybody. So today we're going to talk about solving one-step inequalities involving multiplication and division. So if you remember the last lesson, inequalities are solved just like equations. Okay? Just like equations. But there's two additional things you have to remember with inequalities. The first thing is you graph your answers on a number line. Okay, and we talked about that in the previous lesson. The reason why we graph our answers is because usually there's a wide range of answers with an inequality, where an equation there's usually one answer for right now that satisfies it. But the second thing, and this is the new one, we talked about a little bit with graphing, but when you multiply or divide both sides of the inequality by a negative number, so the number has to be negative, you're dividing both sides by, or multiplying by, you must flip your inequality sign. So this is in the solving process. If you multiply or divide both sides of the inequality by a negative number, you must flip the inequality sign. And the reason why you have to flip the inequality sign is you're actually saying a different side is greater or less than the other side. Okay, you're changing the meaning of the inequality. So again, you have to flip the sign. It's not like what we did before when we were writing inequalities to help us graph it more effectively. This is literally flipping the sign, going from left to right. So you'll see what I mean in a second. So to start off the lesson, we're going to do both an equation and an inequality so you can see the similarities but also the differences. So first, let's start with the equation. So if we have negative 3x equals 9, well, the negative 3 and the x are being multiplied together, so we're going to do the inverse operation, which is division, in both sides by negative 3. So we get x equals negative 3. Okay. So guess what? For the inequality, our first step is going to be exactly the same. We got to get x by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by negative 3. Now always go left to right with your work and take your time. We have x, and now if you go back to the previous slide, when you multiply or divide both sides, this is why it's so important you write out your work. Both sides by a negative number, you must flip your inequality sign. So right here, see how we're dividing both sides by negative 3 in order to solve for it? We have to flip that inequality sign around. And we still get negative 3 on the other side. Okay? So that inequality sign was literally flipped. All the other work stays the same from left to right, but because we divided both sides by negative 3, we have to flip the inequality sign. And now we still have to graph it. So it's going to be a closed circle on negative 3. And it says x is less than or equal to negative 3, so we're going to shade to the left. Okay? If at any time during this video lesson I'm going too fast, pause the video to give yourself the opportunity to write it down and interpret what's happening. That's an important part of learning math. So now we're going to start with the inequality this time. Actually, we'll start with the equation. What am I saying? So we start with the equation. We divide by 4 because 4 is being multiplied to x. X equals negative 5. Now for the inequality, we're also going to divide by 4. So now we go, I should draw a line through the equation, but we go left to right. X. Now look at the number we're dividing by. It's positive 4. It doesn't matter if this 20 is negative. Because we're dividing both sides by a positive 4 and not by a negative 4, the inequality sign actually stays the same. We're not changing the meaning of the inequality. And now we do our math over here, negative 5. A common misconception among students who struggle with algebra is they see a negative number and they want to flip the sign. It's only when you're multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative number that inequality sign flips. Okay? So now we graph it. So we'll go to negative 5. It's going to be an open circle on negative 5, and we want numbers greater than negative 5, shade to the right. Let's look at another example. Now this example actually involves division, and we're just going to stick with the inequality for this. So from now on. So x is being divided by 3 on the left-hand side, so we multiply both sides by 3. Okay? That would be the inverse operation of dividing by 3. So we get x is less than negative 6. Now you might say, well, Mr. Pippage, why didn't you flip the sign? There's a negative 2 here. It's because we actually multiplied both sides by positive 3. If the 3's I just circled, if they were negative, then we would flip the sign, the inequality sign. But we do not, since we multiplied both sides by positive 3. So to graph this, I go to negative 6, put a open circle, because it's less than, and since x is less than negative 6, we shade numbers smaller than it. Okay? So let's look at this example. So we have negative 4 is greater than or equal to x divided by negative 2. Okay? So we'll draw our line through an equality sign to separate our two sides. The variable is actually on the right-hand side for this inequality. So right now, x is being divided by negative 2. The opposite of dividing by negative 2 is multiplying by negative 2, or the inverse. And this is why it's so critical to write out your work, especially if you struggle a little bit with algebra. So these cancel on the right-hand side, okay? So I'll go left to right now. We have positive 8. Negative times a negative is positive. Do we flip the sign? I'm going to pause for 10 seconds. Ask yourself the question, do I flip the inequality sign right now? So what's the answer? Yes. We flipped the sign because the 2 that we multiplied by both sides was negative 2. So if you multiply or divide both sides of your inequality by a negative number, you got to flip the inequality sign to change its meaning. Okay? So there's technically our final answer. But a lot of students who look at that will graph it incorrectly. So we're going to rewrite, not flipping, I call it just rewriting. I put x and 8, and I still want to say the x is bigger right now. So x is greater than or equal to 8. So I'll make a number line. This is the easy part now, hopefully. Getting easy for you. I'll put 0 a little bit to the left in this problem because we're at positive 8. And I went up by 2's. But I have a closed circle at 8. And I want to shade numbers greater than or equal to 8. So we shade to the right. Okay? So what about this problem? Negative x is greater than 3. Well, that's a little tricky. I actually saw these in the first section on graphing inequalities. But this is actually a one-step inequality. In order, we got to get x totally by itself. We want a positive x, positive 1x. Right now, it's a negative 1x. So if you don't see a coefficient in front of the x, write a 1 there. So the whole number is, when I say whole number, I mean the number in front of x. That entire number is a negative 1. So to solve this, we actually divide both sides by negative 1. Now again, go left to right, x, and then we divided both sides by a negative number, so we got to flip the sign. Negative 3 with our math. Make our number line. We're at negative 3. Open circle at negative 3 and shade to the left. Okay? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you 2 example problems. Copy them down and pause the video. There'll be 30 seconds of space in the video. And then when you're ready, restart the video and we'll go over those problems. So there are your 2 problems. So once you write them down, go ahead, pause the video, and then do them. Now these problems are going to be gone over, We're going to do them in about 15 seconds. So again, pause the video, do them on your own. Okay, so let's go over these 2 problems. So for the first one, hopefully you guys get an attempt on your own. The x is on the right-hand side. It's being multiplied by negative 2, so we're going to divide both sides by negative 2. And here's where it gets a little tricky because people don't like fractions. Negative 3 divided by negative 2. That does not divide to be an integer. Okay? But 2 negatives when we're dividing makes a positive. Okay? And then since we divided by negative 2, we do have to flip the sign. Always go left to right with your work. So I could rewrite this as x is greater than or equal to 3 over 2. Now, in order to help you graph that, you might want to type this in your calculator. Some people know where that is just by looking at it. But 3 over 2 is 1.5. Okay, so for our graph, we're going to be exactly between 1 and 2. Closed circle. And we want values of x less than 1.5, so we shade to the left. All right. And for our last one, x is on the left-hand side this time. It's being multiplied by -2. So what we do is I said that incorrectly. It's being divided by -2. So what we're going to do to both sides is times it by -2. Okay? So we're multiplying both sides by -2. So on the left-hand side, the -2's cancel. We're left with x. And again, since we multiplied by a negative number, we have to flip our sign. Now again, I just want you to emphasize really quick that you're not always going to flip the sign when you see a negative number. Let me just finish this problem. That's what you get. Okay? Because a negative times a negative here is a positive. So we're going to be on 2, and we're going to shade to the left once we put an open circle. But I just want you to look at this problem really quick. We times both sides by -2. If we go back to a problem at the beginning, like these problems right here, if we divide or multiply by a positive number, you do not flip the inequality sign. Okay? Again, you only flip the inequality sign from left to right when you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So hopefully you found this video lesson helpful. If you have any questions while you're working or after watching this video, please let me know. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Thank you.